world control, Pat. Settle for nothing else.
At the top of this conspiracy are a handful of ultra-wealthy multi-billionaires in the world. Some of them have been conspiring for more than a century. Their tools are the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, and they have tools in other countries as well.
Now, they've taken over our government, both Republicans and Democrats. There's no difference anymore between the two parties. They control both parties. It doesn't matter to them which one wins, because who's ever running for president will be someone they anoint. And the fact of the matter happens to be that you can't win an election unless you have enough money to win. They make sure who gets the money.
And they've even written about it. There's a fellow by the name of Carroll Quigley, and he wrote several books about this group of people and their origins and their roots coming from Europe and England in particular. And he comes to a very interesting point in one of his books where he says, okay, this is the way the real world is. He said, how is it that we collectivists, we elitists, how can we rule the world when at the same time we want to let the average person think that they're living in a, quote, democracy? And he answers the question brilliantly. He said, it's very simple. You've got to have two major political parties, and they'll both have the same major goals, the same basic fundamental principles, and they'll argue with each other on the surface with slogans and leadership and style and all of that sort of thing. He said, but we will control them both. There's the strategy. There's the whole scam behind this left-right paradigm. When you understand this history and this reality, you look at it and you say, well, yes, we've got a left wing and a right wing, but they're just opposite wings of the same ugly bird. And we have our cheerleaders, you know, the news commentators and the talk show hosts on the left and on the right, and they frame the debate. They won't let the American people debate the real issues. They won't let them even think about the real issues, which are we going to keep American sovereignty or not? Are we going to let the Federal Reserve System, which is a banking cartel, continue to run our government or not? They won't let us talk about those things.
Ron Paul, what's your perspective on how the media has been ignoring him and demonizing him?
It's fascinating. I must say, the more I listen to and the more I read what Ron Paul has to say, the more fascinated and the more respect I have for this guy, because this guy's got courage. He understands that people want to be set free from big government, and he's not, you know, he's not scared of taking on any issue at all. And you know, I watch him. There was one of the primaries the other day where Ron Paul got 27%, an amazing figure, and yet the BBC virtually refuse to even admit the fact that he's actually contesting the race. And I understand that many conventional parts of the U.S. media have been the same.
And by the way, this pretending Ron Paul doesn't exist for some reason has been going on for weeks.
A new Gallup survey showing Rick Perry running second to Mitt Romney, knocking down Iowa favorite Michelle Bachmann to fourth.
Behind who? Fourth behind who? How did Libertarian Ron Paul become the 13th floor in a hotel?
And it's kind of, you get a Ron Paul figure that comes along and challenges basic assumptions. And perhaps, to some extent, I've tried to do some of the same things over on this side of the Atlantic. And it's like a media blackout.
That tells you there's the evidence that it's controlled.
The owners of this country are the voters of this country.
You're wrong about that, my friend.
Aren't the owners of this country the voters in this country who elected George Bush?
No, they're not. Listen, politics, these elections are a charade. It is a charade.
Oh, okay.
It is, they are meant to, well, I'll tell you, listen, just listen for a minute. Learn a little something. The elections and politicians are in place in order to give Americans the illusion that they have freedom of choice. You don't really have choice in this country.
This is not a party issue. This is not a left-right issue. The question is not, should we have big government or little government? The question is, who should government serve? And it should serve the people. And it hasn't been doing it, and it still isn't doing it. And changing from Republican to Democrat or Democrat to Republican is not going to change that.
So that's the problem. As long as we depend on the phony wrestlers and depend upon